Hi, I'm Beep. My brother Honk is running the camera today. We are the Beep and Honk Show. We are drone bees and we answer tech questions. Today's question comes from Chiggy, who asks, is there a good process that you guys use for testing out electronic things on a drone? Thank you for asking, Chiggy. This is actually a pretty deep question, and we're both really excited that someone asked us this. I'm going to dive right into things to help answer you. We'll switch to a camera on Honk's workbench. Now this looks silly, doesn't it? Don't worry, we give everyone permission to laugh. But what you're seeing here is a very unlikely and powerful tool that is used frequently. This is known by many names depending on what industry you might be familiar with. The electronics world calls something like this a bench setup or development board. The software world might call this a sandbox or test environment. Those familiar with audio and music production might call this a patch rig or test chain. The automotive world would call this an engine stand or a test mule. Show business and entertainment would probably call this a stunt double. If you look closely, what you're seeing is a full stack of flight controller and a pair of 4-in-1 electronic speed controls connected together and configured for an octomotor or X8 drone. This was built initially by Honk to learn about how to construct and tune 8-motor drones. It has since also taken to the role of testing anything that plugs into a flight controller as well. The frames are actually broken but glued together just enough for this test rig to stay put. The motors are mismatched because they are from surviving drones that took crash damage. Some of the motors even have slightly bent shafts. You can see that some motors are even oddball sizes as well. They only need to spin up enough to validate motor control. There are also a ton of different devices plugged into this flight controller, with most of them being labeled. Because everything has been configured to use connectors, we can very quickly test and evaluate new or existing hardware on this system. If you damage components such as motors, don't discard them right away. They could serve their duties effectively as part of a future testing rig someday. If we purchase new hardware that we've never worked on, we could safely learn and test out how effective it is on this testing rig without taking any risks that might break or damage our existing drones. For example, this is a new LED strip that we are trying out. With this test rig, we can very easily daisy chain them and quickly plug them into the rig to see how well the LED works. We can clearly see how bright it is compared with our existing strip, or watch how good the color fidelity is, or if it works with the programming that we plan on using it with Betaflight. If you ever find yourself wanting to build custom projects or delve deeper into experimenting from the normal stuff that's found online, building a testing rig like this is one of the most powerful tools you can have in your workshop. Ideally, you would want to use the same flight controller, electronic speed controls, and any other hardware that you plan on using for your final projects. But sometimes you might not need to, particularly if you're still learning and getting used to the new hardware you might integrate. On camera right now, this testing rig can be set up to quickly change out different radio receivers as well. Watch how quickly it is to change the layout from a standard ELRS receiver to a hybrid ELRS receiver with legacy PWM ports. This setup allows for testing not just the functionality of motors, but for hobby-grade servos that will be connected to some future project model. Testing rigs help eliminate uncertainties and validate new ideas. Remember that hope should not be a strategy for building aircraft like drones. If you're working on a custom project, you may very quickly find yourself in uncharted territory. Instead of just hoping and assuming things will work out, you will want to validate your ideas to help avoid costly mistakes. Having a testing rig to incrementally check and prove out the concepts that you have in your head will be super valuable. Right now, this testing rig has helped us prove the concept that we will still have the ability to drive mechanical servos from our transmitter reliably and safely. Usually on a flight controller that supports 2 ESC connections, you could steal some of the unused motor and throttle connections from the second group and use them to drive the PWM signals that operate servos. But this testing rig is set up to use 8 motors, just like our intended model. This takes up all of our once free PWM connections. Now what? There is one more that we could have used, and that would be to steal the PWM output from our LED switch. But the drone Honk has in mind needs the LED lighting, so we can't take it from there. What were our options? It would have been very easy to guess and hope, but with this setup, it was much better to actually test and evaluate ideas that came our way. The answer for this particular problem was discovered quickly by way of this testing rig. Honk realized that there were ELRS receivers that had traditional PWM outputs, and he discovered that they could also output the serial crossfire protocol data directly from the receiver to the flight controller while simultaneously operating those PWM channels. Those remaining channels could be remapped to those that were not being used on our radio transmitter, which were free. And the result was our answer. The testing harness made it possible for us to identify, test, and fully break in the setup, which will go into that future drone. 8 motors under full control, plus LED lighting, plus 6 usable servo channels as well. The servos get clean power from the receiver, and everything has been set up like this to run for literally hours, burned in to show that everything is truly stable and happy. Anyhow, Chiggy, I hope this answers your question. I hope this inspires you and others out there to think about perhaps building a testing rig like this, particularly if you're interested in working on custom projects. Even for those of you who don't plan on designing or building anything too risky, a testing rig like this can give you the opportunity to learn or just be curious without risking your production flying models. Well, anyhow, good night, everyone. Thank you for watching, and be safe. Bye.